Hello, and welcome to Coffee Time. Coffee Time is a space where magical humans come together for some real talk, strong coffee, and powerful introspections on whatever is top of mind right now. My name is Natalie, and I am your host for this channel and today's super exciting conversation. The idea behind Coffee Time is that you are in your favorite coffee shop, maybe cozied up with a book, and you begin to listen in on an intriguing conversation between folks at the next table over. For that reason, there is no big introduction. We absolutely let the conversation speak for itself. And if you do want to know more about these special guests following today's episode, I invite you to check out the show notes for more details. So on that note, let's dive right in.
Absolutely. And oh yeah, I remember you mentioned like, what has the spirit been here to teach me? So one of the recurring themes, not just with this spirit. So I learn stuff when I'm sleeping. Yay.
Mm-hmm.
I've crossed spirits while I was sleeping for like the first time. That's when it happened.
Okay.
And the big lesson in that though, and with some that have been in my house was, sorry, just a sec. I keep getting this thing where my throat closes up. There was a spirit, there was a spirit who was visiting me, but it could be my blood sugar right now. I'm just going to actually check it too. There was a spirit that was visiting me that I accidentally brought home from the hospital. And I think that he was like a smoker and potentially died from like complications with like lungs. He was in a wheelchair. It was a grumpy old man. And I was like, dude, I'm recovering from surgery. Like I can't talk to you right now. But until I realized what was going on, because Taylor was like, he might be trying to show you how he died. Like that might be why you're getting this feeling. And it felt like my whole throat was just like seizing up. But it's also connected to like anxiety because there's been some things recently where I'm not like fully stating how I feel about something, but it's in conflict with the opinions of those around me and like realizing like I'm not going to be able to like change their opinions, nor am I supposed to.
Yep.
It's been a thing. Right now, I think it's just my medication is making me feel blah and my blood sugar is super high. This is real life. This is just what happens and it sucks. Just see here. Okay.
Well, obviously, like if you have to break or do whatever, do what you got to do, girl.
Chug a lot of water while we talk. But so the big thing that the lesson has been there for was I need to realize that these worlds, like one's not better than the other. One doesn't have more authority to be here than the other. We coexist. And it really was like a next step in recognizing energy as being neutral. Was having these spirits be in my house and realize like I don't need to panic and make them go away. And I did. Like the one night there was something in my closet and I was like, God, why is this thing in my closet? And I kind of forced it to cross over and I felt terrible. I was like, I feel like I pushed and I shouldn't have pushed. Like, what do I do? And I ended up talking to the spirit of that, not of mine, but the one I've been working with. And she's like, yeah, you didn't need to do that. Like, that's why I put him there was so you could learn that. But like, know that he's in a good place. Like you didn't do anything wrong. It's just, this also doesn't need to be your reaction every time. And now I realize it's interesting because now I have a house spirit who just like is here. And it was Taylor's house spirit.
Oh.
And then I invited him over and now he's just here and he's protecting me like all the time. And I think what he does is when there are things around, he kind of gives them the lay of the land because nothing has felt like it has lingered here very long. And the grumpy old man, one night I was going to bed and I saw him wheel out of my condo. He might come back, but he just went because he was like, she's not talking to me. I'm out of here. I was like, okay, you go mess with someone else. Yeah.
Do you ask them, what can I help you with?
I do when I have energy. And I've helped a couple cross and ask why they were here and what was going on. The first one I ever crossed, it was so sad. Like he was just so sad and so alone. And I just remember at first I didn't do anything about it. He was in Vivian's closet. And the main thing I communicated was just like, the energy in this closet is not good for you. Like you don't need what is here. I'm worried for you.
What's with the closet?
Sorry?
The closet is literally, it just like, what is with the closet? What? It's like a portal.
I know like someone else said that too. I don't think so. I think what it is, it's just that like I lived here 2 years before I realized that she was there. And I think it's just that there's like a footprint, from her being there. And so I think things just gravitate to that spot, Yeah.
Do you like, so, okay, so we're talking about all of these entities that come to you all around, they're coming to you. So do they come to everybody and everybody just doesn't see it, isn't in that place to recognize it? Or is it a very like specific, like, are they in my new place right now? Like, hello, like
Maybe, but
maybe, like, is it
so
you're
yeah.
now working with these spirits, you're actively seeing them or whomever these entities are? Like, is this an everybody thing or what, in your opinion?
I don't think that.
Or does it involve the work that you're here to do, which is more personal?
Yeah. I think everyone is capable. I don't think everyone is meant to necessarily do it in this lifetime. I feel like probably everyone has come across one at some point or another, but you might not need to see them and they might not need to interact with you. I think why I'm getting more is one, because it's what I need to learn right now and I am open to it. And two, the ones that I'm getting tend to be the ones that connect to me. So like relate to me. And it's interesting you mentioned that too, because I have the wards, by the way. My house is warded. There's protection always. I protect myself like multiple times a day. And my friend Taylor, though, we were talking and and I was trying to figure out like, why are all these entities coming? Like I was trying to figure it out. I was like, what is going on? Like, what am I meant to do with this? And she was like, well, first off, you should have protected yourself at the hospital. I was like, yeah, I know, but I thought I could just worry about my like physical body for like a day. Like it would have been great to just not have to worry about all this other shit when I was getting surgery at 7:00 in the morning. Like, thank you. Anyway, what I realized when I was talking to her was like, she's like, you know, you have a choice. She's like, you could say no to the spirit stuff and like still do the spiritual stuff, but not like spirits and ghosts.
Yeah.
But what I realized was like, I don't want to. Like I had that hit of the claircognizance being like, my wards work to the extent that they do because I don't want them to work completely. Like I value these connections and like I value being able to support these entities in this way. I don't think it's my main calling. Like I'm not like her or other people who like that's what they do 24/7 is like help things cross and like, you know, that's what they're doing. But I think I have something to offer and the ones that need me will come, kind of thing.
It's essentially like the wards act as boundaries and not walls, right?
Exactly.
So they can be soft and come up and go down and whatever else.
Yeah. So most recently, there was something here and it was happening at the same time as I was dealing with something at my friend's. I wasn't dealing with it. I was coaching her a little bit, being like, dude, you need to do something about this. Like, this does not feel good. And my friend Taylor was kind of helping, like, try to figure out what was going on and all that. And so I thought the thing in my house was connected to this other thing because I'd gotten like weird energy and I was like, oh, did it send something here? Like, what's happening? And then I was panicked. And then she sent something she works with to protect me. And so I was like, thank you. And like, but the thing that came up once again was you need to acknowledge what's there. You need to just say, hey, I know you're here. It's okay. You can't stay here though. And like, we'll talk tomorrow at this time. And so I did that and it felt okay. And the next day I sat down and I went into my records to talk to this entity that was in my house. And the way I kind of did it was, I always have a candle with protection, like it has a sigil on it. So like extra protection. I do the bubble thing. I go in my records and I just set the intention when I was in there. And I said to whatever energy was in my house, I was like, I'm in my records right now to talk to you. You can talk and we can interact, but my records are not a place that you're allowed to go. Like, this is just for me. You can be here. And we talked. And, so it started, I'd seen an image the night before and oh my God, it was terrifying, but it didn't terrify me because it's like in my third eye. It's not like it's in front of me. And it's interesting because you mentioned like when I was a kid, I would get these like images of people that freaked me out all the time. And I didn't understand why. Like I would be falling asleep every night and I'd see a person and they'd just start to decay in front of me. And I was like, what is happening? Every night. And now I see this girl, dark hair, pale skin, and her face is like cracked. Like it looks like zombie-ish. And I was like, oh, like, what is this happening? And so then I go into my records, and when I'm in my records, I don't really see it. I more feel the energy. And I was like, oh, there's a little girl in my house. Like, that's what it was. And I asked her name, and she said her name was Sarah. And I was like, I got chills. And I kind of said, like, I was asking, like, why are you here? And she said that Joshua told her it was safe.
Oh.
So Joshua had sent her here, and how that connects, I don't really know, but it's possible he comes back to check on her, like, or maybe she had like started to go but wasn't ready, so he was like, okay, go to this place. Like, I don't know what that was about. And I was like, well, what are you looking for? Like, what can I help you with? And I saw this image of her holding, like, reaching up to hold a man's hand, because like she was small. And the first thought was like, oh, like you want your father. But then I was like, no, it's not that. Like, the feeling I got was she wants a father, but whoever was in her life did not protect her. And she came here because she knows that I want a father. Like, my dad hasn't talked to me in over a year, right? And so I think she saw that in me and felt safe. And so she just kept saying, she's like, I want a family. Like, I want security. And for me, that's a family. And so we talked for a bit, and then finally I was like, okay, like, you can go. And she was scared. And I was like, well, I can't, like, I'm honest. I'm like, I can't tell you what's on the other side, but I know that there's love for you there. And like, you can have that for yourself. Like, you don't need to take it from me, kind of thing. Like, this is mine. You have your own, and you'll find it. And on the other side, the way I saw it, like on the other side of the door, like Joshua was there. And as soon as she like started to go, he like ran towards her. And I'm like, Joshua, you stay. Like, she's coming to you. Like, go back. And it's interesting because I'll see them in different places and feel them differently. So when this is okay. For the week before I actually acknowledged that she was here, I kept feeling something like pulling on my hair. And I was like, what is going on? Like, barely, but I'd feel something kind of touch my head and be like, whatever. When I was sitting on my chair doing this, same thing. I felt on my head and I felt on my arm. And I was like, oh, okay. And then as she was leaving, she was running at the same, like, towards him and towards the other side. But at the same time, I could feel she was still kind of here and she wanted a hug. And so I like hugged her, and like, obviously it's like more energetic, but I like almost started crying. Like, it's so hard to explain what that sensation was like. And it's like moments like that I don't want to not have.
Yeah.
But the really fascinating thing, I feel like as a parent too, you'll appreciate this. So I was talking to my niece about this, and because my niece knows about my friend at the park, because she's gone with me now. And I was like, she's at the tree. What tree? All the trees. Can I see her? No, you can't. She's everywhere. Oh, okay. And it's like this very thing. And then we go to the trees, and then she's like, which tree do I go to? She's like, which one feels best? And she walks right up to the one that I'd been going to, like the 7 willow trees that are in a row, and just puts her hand.
Weird.
I was like, okay. And now with Sarah, I was in the car with my niece, and my niece always asks, she's like, do you have any more friends visiting? Because she knows about the ghosts. And she's 7. And she was like, well, I want to play hide and seek with her. And I was like, well, I don't think you really can. And she's like, why? I was like, well, because you can't see her, so she'd win. And my niece is like, well, she can count. I was like, okay. It was just really funny. And then she was like, well, what about tag? And I was like, maybe you could play tag. And then she was like, does she have hair? And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, so you can like grab it. And I was like, what? Like, yeah. And I hadn't told her about any of this. So I feel like it was that like tag, like, when you reach and you're kind of swiping to get at something. Like, it was just
wow. I mean,
yeah.
When you're talking about this, like the thing that I was thinking about too, and just from like a psychological perspective, is where you mentioned Sarah saying, I wanted protection and my dad and whatever that might be. Do you ever think that those beings that you're seeing before you close your eyes at night that are like disintegrating in front of you are parts of you, are parts of your consciousness or your psyche or whatever it might be that is either healing itself or leaving itself behind? Because that's a really, and that's pretty like profound to say, because I think that if you look at that and you're like, yeah, I haven't spoken to my dad in a year, and I like want this, like, you know what I mean? Like there are really shocking similarities between those things, and I'm not saying that all of the beings or entities that you've seen have had that of a profound of a potential connection, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is you are both fulfilling a need here.
Oh, totally. No, that makes sense. Yeah, and I think it is. It's like some were just there because I was vulnerable and they wanna, like
And they
pick at
trust
me
you.
and whatever.
Yeah.
But the ones that come that need help, there's a reason they feel safe coming to me. And so I think definitely it's like it's that healing, and it does help me, and like having that, just that, oh my God, like I haven't hugged a human in a very long time. Like just that hug with Sarah was like, I needed that, and I was the kid that needed to feel love and didn't get it. And I get to be that for her. Like, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I definitely think there's like mutual healing. And I think that's also why I haven't protected my house more strongly. Because like I was told recently too, like I can pull from the tree energy. And the way it came through was very much like, if I really wanted to, and if I actually like practiced this, I could connect to that energy and basically like snap my fingers and anything in my house would just be gone. Like it could be like that. But then I'm like, then why haven't I? Right. And that's the thing, is because I don't want it to be fully gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, as you talk about like your journey and like things like this, and like, what were the parts that you were really most afraid of, or what were like the hardest parts so far, or the most challenging parts to go through or make sense of?
One of this, like recently or like overall?
I would say overall, but like if it comes through as the recent time, then go with that.
Yeah. I think the really hard part growing up was feeling like I thought for a long time that I was crazy. Because there was no explanation for this. And even the thought of this is ghosts or whatever was terrifying, right? Like I didn't have any constructive way to figure that out and move through it. And like, I remember working at Starbucks in Toronto, and a friend of mine that I would close with knew that this happened, and she would close and we'd be working and I would still hear people talking, and she would see the look on my face and she'd be like, it's okay. I made sure that everyone's gone. And I was like, okay. And I'd like keep doing my thing. And I think it was that it wasn't having an explanation. And I went to psychologists. So actually, backtrack a bit more. When I was around 15, so same age of all that stuff in my house and just everything going haywire, I got diagnosed with OCD. And so here's part of my self-diagnosis was the obsession with death. And so it was like, and that's part of the OCD thing. But what I thought that meant was like the reason I was seeing these things like crumble before my eyes every night and like thinking there were ghosts in my house. Like that's what I thought that meant. And obsessive compulsive, like, of course I was becoming obsessive compulsive because I was terrified in my own home. So I was trying to find ways to feel safe. So it's like, if I jump to the bed the same way every night, or I turn out the light in the same way, or I look at a certain point in the mirror, or like whatever it is, I'm going to feel safe. And so I remember being at the hospital and they tried to put me on Prozac and I refused it. But I remember even being at the hospital and they were like asking me, like, do you see anything right now? And I was like, well, yeah, there's something in that window, like looking over here. Is that real? And that's how it was. And I'd be like in the car with my mom and be like, Mom, do you see that person in that window? And she's like, there's no one there. And that, and like hearing the voices, like when I was in that house, I'd gone to the bathroom one night and I was coming down the hall. So the hall kind of went like, stairs went up and then the hall went like around. And my room was here and the bathroom was here, brother, parents. And then there was a room like all the way down the hallway that like no one liked, and a closet, another closet that no one liked. And I remember being in the bathroom and going back to my room and like knowing something was like chasing me. and I shut the door and I heard it call my name under the door. And I was terrified, to the point that I actually called a friend and was like, I can't sleep. I don't know what's going on. There is something in my house. And I think that was the hardest part, was knowing all this stuff was happening, having no explanation for it that made sense. And the thing is, even if it was like a mental health thing, that was still terrifying, because like, what does that mean for my future? And I did get all the tests done. Like, I went to the doctors, I went to the psychologist, I went to the neurologist to see if this was like schizophrenia or something else, and all of that. And there was no clinical explanation.
What were your parents' reactions to this?
They knew none of it.
So you did that on your own?
Yeah.
That takes a lot. A lot.
Yeah. See, I never thought about that. That's what I need to write in the therapist notebook. So
yeah. It takes a lot.
I didn't tell my mom until recently, because my niece was saying things. My niece was saying how at this house there's something in the closet, and at this house there's something under the bed, and at this house this happens. And I said to my mom, I was like, Mom, do not ever tell her that it's okay and it's just pretend, or pretend that you made it go away. You have her call me. And my mom, I think, is actually highly intuitive and has the potential to be psychic, but she has shut it down. And she admits it. Like, she acknowledges the stuff that I say goes on in my house. She's like, it's too scary for me to think that it's real. So I was like, okay. But my niece has it happening and is clearly curious. And so I said to my mom, I was like, you have her call me. And that's what I finally told my mom, was like, this year, I was like, you know that I tried to get a diagnosis. Like, I tried to go and it didn't stick. And that's why I'm so open about this being my life now, is because I tried and that it didn't work. And even like so I'm currently kind of dating this person, and I've been very open about this since like day one, because I have to be. And it's not really their thing, but they're very supportive and they're very open and they listen. And I was like, that's all I can ask for. Cause like, you understand things in your way. I understand things in mine. Cool. Just don't scoff at me and say it's not real. Cause like, this is my experience. Right. And that was a way that I related. I was like, I get that if you haven't had this happen, it sounds wild, and not everyone does have it happen. So true. But I also was like, if there were a more socially acceptable explanation, don't you think I'd choose that? Like, why wouldn't I pick the easier way?
Right? Yeah. I mean, it's super hard, like, to expose yourself or to be vulnerable to reaction. And like, my initial thought would be, well, why would you tell somebody? They're not going to naturally believe you, or this doesn't feel like the norm or what it might be accepted. So it's very easy to not be so open with it, but you're at a point where we're doing this right now, and you're talking about all these things, and you're telling, the person that you're dating, and like all of that stuff. And where you told your mom, like, not to, like, don't not believe your niece or something, because this was your lived experience as well. And so where did that level of, I could do this, or I could be open about this, come from? Because that's, again, really huge, in my opinion.
I feel like, yeah, it is. You are being a mirror right now. My God. So I think part of it was necessity, right? Because like, I couldn't get the help I needed without being open online of like, hey, I need someone to protect my home. Something's going on here that like isn't what you'd expect. I think too, having the online communities where it's maybe a bit easier to talk about this because you all kind of have the common ground, made me realize like, people need this help. Like, this happened to me and I didn't feel like I had anywhere to go. And like, thankfully I made a post and it connected me with people, and it connected me with more people. But like, what about everyone else? And like, I see people in like Soulscape all the time who are mentioning things, or like, they've been doing this work for years, yet they don't protect and ground themselves daily. And I'm like, and like, we need each other. Like, we need to talk about this. And I think even just like the baseline, even if not the spiritual part or like spirits part, because I don't want to make those the same thing. Intuitives and empaths in general, right? Like, this needs to be more talked about. The other thing I've noticed, like, tendencies of like adult like ADHD need to be more talked about. Because those are things I'm like, I've been struggling with this my entire life and had no support. And I think that was it, is like seeing my niece now and seeing what she's going through and seeing how people interact with her, and they don't mean to do it, but I see how harmful it can be. And I don't want her to be me in 22 years. Like, I don't want her to have to go through all the pain that I did and all the feeling broken and all the feeling on the outside and all the feeling lost that I went through. And if me being more open about it and saying the thing to my mom that might make me sound totally wacko, but as her kid probably makes her clue in to like just how difficult this has been, can make that change for her, it's worth it. In terms of like dating, I think because my last relationship got to a point where I was getting into this stuff and it was being scoffed at, and it like I would open my mouth about it and I'd get that reaction of like, pfft. I was like, well, I can't talk to you. Like, I don't feel safe talking to you. And it's like, I don't want to go into an interaction where I'm not safe anymore. And you can't, like, you can't hold a safe space for me if you don't know what I'm bringing into it. And so, like, if this is my lived experience, I need to share about it, not like in it all the detail all the time, because I don't think that's vulnerability either, but like, I need to show up for it so that you can, or you can decide that you're not here for it.
And keep it moving.
Yeah, but this isn't changing for me. So like, hello. Yeah. Yeah.
What are like, if those are like the challenges and why you've become more vulnerable, what are the kind of, I don't know, best parts of your journey so far that you can embrace? Because I see it all obviously very connected. Like you today, even versus you I met 6 months ago or whatever it was.
Huge changes, right?
So what are those kind of highlights for you?
You know, recently, it was like a couple months ago, actually shortly after the breakup. So the breakup happened. We were talking for like a month. It got to a point where I was like, hey, you know what? I need to like full stop to this so I can figure my shit out. Mm-hmm. And it didn't take long for there to be this switch. And I think all this spiritual stuff was pointing towards that same switch. And it was the first time in my life, and I was sharing this the other day with the person that I've alluded to. It was the first time in my life that I've realized I was like, I feel happy. Like, I never connected to that word. People would describe me as that. Like, you see me online, I have this, like, I'm going to be vain for a minute. Like, I have a great smile. Like, I'm pretty, like, I've been told I have, like, a very attractive energy, like, just in general to people. And I present that way. And people will be like, oh, you're so happy. Like, you're so this. And it's like, but I'm not. And because I didn't understand that word. And I think that was a huge thing, was just a couple months ago, for the first time, I was like, I am happy. And that's huge. And I think that happiness, it's not positivity. I don't want to conflate those, because those are not the same thing. And I am definitely a realist. I think that happiness comes from not even like 100% doing it, because I think it's like ongoing learning, but I think it comes from being able to just like actually show up as myself. And not in the way that I used to, that pushed me away from other people. It's like showing up as myself in a way that supports community, and supports connection, and seeing myself through like a lens of compassion and love. And like that, I think, is happiness, at least as I know it right now. And the other cool thing with all of that is like, through that, I'm also starting to be able to like feel other things. Like when you mentioned like, oh my God, you did all of that on your own. And it wouldn't have been that long ago that I would have been like, yeah, what choice did I have? And now I'm like,
survival mode.
Sorry?
That's called survival mode.
trauma. And now though, you say that, and I didn't cry, but like I had that feeling, which is, that alone is big for me, of being able to realize, like, you're right. Like no kid should have to go through that. No teenager, no person should have to go through that on their own. And now I have this like Facebook group that, and I know that might sound really like superficial, but it's COVID, it's online. How else do you find people who are going through these kinds of things? And now it's like, I get to take that like pain and that isolation that I experienced and connect with others in that same place to create community for healing. And that's amazing. And it's like the ultimate act of a like rebellion against the oppressor, right? So like, that's pretty awesome too. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds a lot like happiness is tied to understanding one's purpose in some ways, right? And if we think about the ways that we either distract from understanding one's purpose or finding our paths, it could be a number of different things. It could be addiction. It could be making bad decisions in romantic lives. It could be any sort of way. And the way that it seems to me is that you found some level of clarity in your path and your purpose, even if just today. Even if we're
I was going to say, I don't know what my purpose is.
No. But to this point, December 26th, today, 2020, you're a different person than, I experienced months and months ago. So there's something there.
Well, when I got sober, the big thing that was told to me was like, and what I interpreted through the literature of the program that I kind of worked in, was that my primary purpose in life is to share my experience and be of service. And I think that's it. Like, that's what I'm doing. It's just that I'm doing it in a way now that, like, more honestly than I ever have before, brings together all my cumulative experience. And I'm also doing it from a place where I now am not healed, because I have a lot of healing to go, but I'm in a place where I'm aware that I have that healing to do. Whereas before, I think I thought it was done. I didn't think it existed. And so I think that is why there's been such a huge shift, is like, yeah, I have capital T trauma. I have all this stuff, and I have ghosts, and, I've been terrified, and I don't talk to my dad, and like all this stuff. But it's also like, and I'm not fucking broken. Like, I am here. And all of those things that I still have to unpack are part of this. And like, that's what I have to give, right?
What ways? So, I mean, you're giving a lot of yourself right now, and I've seen it in the Facebook community and things like that. So what are some of the ways that you are supporting yourself in these times? Because I also think that it's very, very easy. That can sometimes become a distraction too, right? Is like the giving of the self almost
too much,
and not replenishing yourself, right? So how do you support and replenish and advocate for yourself?
So I think that's tricky, because, there's also the side of it. And I had my business before. I took down my business in August. Fuck this camera. Had the business before, took down my business in August, did the whole like entrepreneur life thing. And even when I was doing that, I mean, it got extreme in terms of how much time I was putting into it, but I rarely, will say, not never, did things that I didn't enjoy doing. And I think after that got dismantled from my own doing, the record said burn it down. So I was like, burn everything. And then I was like, oh, my relationship too. All right. And here we are. Yeah. And I think that I'm kind of taking the same approach I did then, but with a perspective on balance of like time and energy. So how do I explain that? I think I'm like, I kind of reprioritized my stuff. So like coffee time, I like doing it. I'm doing it more frequently now. I do it in a manageable way. And so I'm doing that. But in terms of like, I guess it's, you know what? It's hard for me to answer the question because I don't see myself giving much of myself in the group space because it feels so natural. And I don't feel like I'm as active in there as I maybe could be. Because it doesn't, like, I'm not trying to sell anything. I don't have a business that I'm trying to support. So it doesn't feel that way. So maybe I can ask you, like, because you say you see me giving myself, but like, what do you see? You know?
I see you supporting, and I even see, like, the moderation of a conversation, or the spark of a question, or just the interaction and engagement. That takes time,
Mm-hmm.
that takes energy, that takes intention, all of that. It is very real if you translate it into what you're doing. If you were to get a value back, and I'm not talking like monetary, but you know what I'm saying. It's like an exchange.
Yeah.
In some ways. And so with any exchange, it's like, how are you taking care of yourself right now? Like, somebody asked me that the other day, and I struggled to answer that question because at first I was like, do I need to take care of myself? Or like, is this a judgment actually? Or are you really truly asking how I take care of myself? And my answer in that moment was, well, I'm kind of just sitting here right now at rest. And that to me is taking care of myself.
Yeah. So, okay. One is I am realistic about, oh, it's beeping on me again. Is it getting lower though? A little bit. Okay. I'm realistic about how much I can actually engage socially. And the other part of that I will tell you is like what you see online and like you and I voice memo and like I have these text conversations, that's my social life. So this is the thing is like, y'all are seeing the extent of it. There's not more happening behind the scenes. I don't live with another human aside from, my house spirit and my cat. So it's manageable because that's what it is, right? And like as much as it is like I give of myself, I do these comments, I do the whatever, it being online means I can step away from that whenever I want to. No one's going to be calling me up to be like, yo, why didn't you respond to my post? Like they're not going to, plus people know that I like boundaries. So like, they're not going to do that ever. Whereas like yesterday I went to my mom's cause it's Boxing Day now, or December 26th, Canada Boxing Day. I went to my mom's yesterday for Christmas, which was really great. I was there from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. That was a lot for me, but I can be pretty active online throughout the day and it doesn't feel as exhausting because I can tap in and out as I want to. So I think the first thing, it's not really like self-care, but it's like figuring out what is a manageable way, a supportive way for me to have those interactions. And for me, the online space and specifically my own Facebook community versus other ones where I don't agree with how it's being moderated, or what they put at the forefront of their positions. And granted, I'm learning how to do that, but I like to think that it's apparent there's a focus on learning to do that. And other groups don't have that at all. And so I don't engage in those groups. I focus on the ones that I like. So it's like my group, and I'm in this really awesome kink group, and like those are fun, and I get good memes, and like that's pretty much it, Yeah. So that's a start. And then I think I schedule stuff. So like my calendar is very color coded. This is what works for me. And I will schedule in time to go into my records for myself, to do it for other people. It's in there. And like I did the card pulls recently, and I was aiming to have those back to people within a couple of days. Took 3 weeks because I was healing from surgery. So I just messaged people and was like, hey, and I posted in the group. I was like, people, I can barely sit right now. So these are going to take longer because I want to be able to put the energy into them.
Yeah.
And I think that is about just like meeting my body where it's at and realizing I can say no. And I think that goes deeper, right? Like, I don't think it's so simple as like, how do you take care of yourself? Because until I realized that I could say no or step back from something and people would still love me, right? I wouldn't have been able to do it in the way I'm doing it now.
That's called boundary and balance.
Yeah.
And owning of that. You know what I mean? Like it is very hard to say no to a thing and not feel the potential judgment of that choice. So that's enough. Setting that boundary and finding that balance, scheduling things so you know, right? You have some level of control about like now it's time to go in and meditate. Now it's time to open my records. Like that is care.
Yeah. And you know, the one coming up right now that I'm gonna just say it blatantly, I schedule when I'm gonna masturbate.
There you go. That's there too.
Because it is meditation, it is magic, it is how I protect my house, and like doing those so okay, it's important. We're going to talk about this because this is what I was doing before I was in the spiritual realm. You know, there's the thing that you do when you're like about to go to bed and you're like, I just need to sleep, like whatever. Cool. But self-care and self-love needs to be intentional. And so I am all about like schedule that time in, whether it is meditating, whether it is I literally put in my calendar, read a book from 7 to 8 p.m. Like go into my records. Those things are in my calendar, as is self-pleasure or self-exploration. Because that is a time for me to sit with and be with and meet myself. And that is important.
Do you have flexibility? Do you allow yourself flexibility there? If you're like, cool, I want to read that book, or I want to self-pleasure between like, 5 and 6 versus 3 and 4. Or is it, you know what I mean? Do you let, it's almost like my question about, and this is a big thing for me is control. My question about you asking specific questions of your records.
Yeah.
There is a reason for that. And you're saying, I kind of like to see what happens when I get in there. So there's flexibility there and there's trust there. And then like in this earthly world right now, it's like, what do I schedule? There's some level of control, but it's also guaranteeing that you get what you need.
Exactly.
Right? So they're different things. But it's like, does that level of flexibility translate into your schedule each day?
And it does, because the other thing, like with like clearly right now, as I keep looking, it's like, what's my blood sugar at? Oh, finally, it's coming down. Thank God. You know, I'm not going to be able to read a book if my blood sugar is high. It's just not happening. So there's definitely like the ideal of what my evening would look like and what it ends up looking like. If I get a migraine, it's going to shift. At the same time, I think through scheduling and being open to the fact that that schedule can change, we can also start to get a feel for when things naturally feel right for us and then work the schedule to that. So like, I love having weekends because I work Monday to Friday. Right now I'm off for a week, so that's exciting. But I love having weekends open aside from these recordings. And sometimes I have like a Saturday night phone call. I don't like to really schedule anything in, and like it's COVID. So like any schedule is going to be pretty much virtual anyway, but I like to leave my day just open so that I can do what I want. And through that, I've come to see that like Sunday afternoon is my favorite me time. Sorry, neighbor. So like, I'll start to just schedule it in there. And it might not be that I put it in my calendar, but it might be that if someone asks me for a phone call on Sunday, I schedule that for like 5 or 6 p.m. or in the morning because I want that afternoon open, So it's kind of like that.
I look at that as knowing yourself. You know yourself. It would be like the same thing like if you were at work and you're like, I'm most productive from 9 to 11. So that's when I do my heads down stuff or whatever. It's starting to know what you need.
Yeah.
And it's not actually looking at a schedule as rigid, but it's like, hey, this is where I know what I need and I'm going to get fulfilled.
Well, and it's like, I actually, a post came up in my memories from like a year or two ago about this the other day. And it was like, structure gives freedom. And that's kind of how I see that is like implementing that structure, implementing those boundaries for time, for self. And that boundary is for the other person, but it's also for me to be like, no, I need to say no to other things because I'm saying yes to me for that hour. And in time that becomes habit. And then there's this freedom and this fluidity that can happen in showing up for me moment to moment and recognizing what I need. And like, that's pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Coffee Time. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if today's show resonated, I invite you to drop into the comment section and share whatever personal introspection came up for you today. Anything you can do to help make the show more accessible is super duper appreciated. Until next time, I am your host and coffee drinking companion, Natalie, wishing you a beautifully caffeinated day.